was that it was also circumstantial to a degree that they lost that map because they got unlucky with having well as the second point.
Sure, but how much variation is there in the Torp strat? Because there's two variations I see so far. Either you rotate and you save the Torp turret, or you put the Torp turret high up somewhere and you have crossfire. That's
the way they play it is they wait until somebody dives in to even deploy the Torb turret. Like, they don't set up a hard point. They reactively place the Torb turret on that map, or on that point, I should say.
Yeah, and you can Fury craft that, like in Fury. Like, you don't need to go trial and error in scrims for hours, in my opinion.
Okay, what about if we talk then about the Spark? Because this is a team that came in very, very highly touted. People thought they had a chance to be one of the best teams, but they have one game left. It's against the Defiant, and if they win it, the best they can end the season on is 4-3. And obviously, you look at some of the losses they had. They had lost to London. I'm trying to think who else it was they lost to. They lost to another one that was like a questionable one on paper. Like, it's fair enough if they lose to, I think they lost to Shock, maybe.
They lost to the Outlaws. That was the weird
one. Outlaws, that was the other one, yes. So two of the teams, obviously, that have struggled. What do you, since we've basically almost seen the end of stage one, they're probably not going to be a playoff team. What do you make of this team, Sideshow?
Outrageous chokers is what I make of them. The scrim gods of 2019.
Tell us what you really think. Fucking hell. Come on. Keep going.
Actually, madness, the difference in quality from this team. Because when you see them, when they're playing their best, they look like a very competent team, you know? They've got some great players. IDK popping off all over the place. They've got fairly decent tank line. You know, Gusue and Nosmike can both make pretty decent plays. When Nosmike was playing at the end of the Valiant game, he absolutely manhandled them. They're really good at setting up Diva Bomb combos as well. They seem to have that pretty much down to a T, and it leads to these big 4K rear bombs that everybody loves. But of course, they can also play the DPS kind of compositions because they have just Bazzi, who's really good at Widowmaker, and then a bunch of other players that can play other things as well. But then when you see them at their worst, it's like they have no idea how to play. So it must be communication issues on top of nerves, I think. When they played their first game against Shanghai, they said in an interview afterwards that they were like properly like shaking with nerves when they played that first game on stage. And I think that it's something that seems to be a recurring problem for them because the inconsistency and the wild swings in this team are more than we've seen from anybody else, I think. And it just makes them incredibly difficult to predict, like which Spark is actually going to turn up to this game. When they played against Houston, it was shocking for everybody. I mean, the pros that had scrimmed against them, nobody expected that to be the case. The analysts that had been watching them, nobody expected that to be the case. And it wasn't like the Outlaws had some kind of crazy counter-strat or outperformed them or were insane. Spark just completely forgot how to play Overwatch. And it was all over the place. So they've got some... I don't even know what to say about this team. They are so unpredictable, it's mental.
Come on, Peak.
I think it's nerves. Like, they lost to... They lost to Shock before the Houston game, I think, right?
Yes. Well, after.
No, that was after, yeah. They lost to Outlaws, then Spitfire, then Shock.
Yeah, and then they came back and they won their last one very convincingly against the Gladiators.
Yeah, I think the loss to Shock, to Outlaws, basically caused maybe feeling like they are worse than they actually are. Or who knows, like, to me it looks like they choked because of nerves. Not really tilt, if that makes sense. There's like a feeling I get from when watching them. It feels like they're just nervous.
Yeah, they feel scared, right? Yeah. It looks like they're scared. It doesn't look like they're throwing themselves in and like they're angry or they're tilted or anything. It looks like they're nervous and uncoordinated. They don't set up plays and they don't react to things. They're not decisive in how they play. But when you see them at their best, they are a very decisive team. They go, they make those plays, they push aggressively. And sometimes that led to like them being nervous, but then it was like overtime situations. And because overtime forces you to push, they'd end up winning. It was so odd watching them.
I think because of overtime, they were the team with the crazy like overtime.
No, that was Charge actually. That was
Charge. Yeah.
Well, I guess like in overtime, nerves don't really matter that much. Like you go into this like autopilot mode where you're forced to like either play or not. I feel like they should play more Guju though. because I think Guju has performed really well.
Gushui, they actually did. They played him all 4 maps against the Gladiators, and they won. So,
I think Gushui is the better option, certainly if you're playing Winston. I was very unimpressed with how No Smite was playing Winston. And not just because, you know, like the meme of Gushui just being unbelievably good with his primals and stuff like that, but actually No Smite in the Korean contenders looked fine when he was playing Winston, but in this matter it really looks like he doesn't quite understand how to play Winston Goats, and he's very undecisive and like making all the wrong rotations and stuff. And between their Rhines, it seems fairly even to me. I haven't really spotted a difference. What do you think about that, Peak? About how the two play Reinhardt?
I haven't been impressed anything by Guju's Reinhardt. I think No Smite is a Reinhardt player, and then he's on Winston when he needs to be on Winston. When it's like standard to be on Winston, like Numbani first point defense, for example, or Horizon first point defense. I think Gladiators are the only team that forces Reinhardt there on Numbani first point defense, for example. And I have no idea. I have no idea why. I haven't been looking into Spark that much either.
Okay. What about this then? A team you must have watched is obviously Shock. So can Shock win stage 1?
Oh, they definitely can. Definitely can.
There we go. Start the hype.
I feel like, okay, so when you see Super play, you would sometimes see him die, but like Super has been performing really well recently.
Agreed.
And I feel like sometimes he can be too quick in how he rotates. It feels like he's the one making the calls. I'm not sure if he does, but based on the team's body language, like he's the one to drop first from, like if they play Village, Nepal and they are high ground, he's the one to drop first from the bridge. He's the one to drop first on Hollywood when attacking first point, like from stairs. And it feels like if Violet picks up like the reactions, he's gonna match that speed, and they're gonna be a lot more quicker. They won't risk getting picked off. Rascal needs to wake up if he's gonna play, because he ends up playing Brig as if it's Winston they're facing, like versus Justice on Umbani. And I think Rascal is in just to give him practice, not practice, but it's like stage time, but also not having permabenched. Maybe something internally, who knows? But I feel like with Architect and Violet just being a bit more safe, so to say, like he's not accustomed to the punishes, they will be a lot stronger than they are right now. And they definitely have a chance of winning stage 1.
I think they can really learn from that match against the Titans as well. If they go up against teams like that in the future, there's some real key points to take away from that. I think the first and most important one is that Violet needs to be integrated with the team a little more, because he takes very aggressive positions and outputs a shit ton of damage, but he was very slow to move with them on rotates and got caught out first pick a lot. So I think he's a phenomenally talented player, and I think he's gonna be really great with this team. But at the moment, it's a bit of a weakness for them because he's not quite tight with the rest of the team. There's an amazing moment on King's Row where the whole of their team was playing the cart, and they all Shocker, a super fast team to move and react to everything, right? So 5 of their players dash down the flank, and Violet's just sat on the cart, still fighting, like goes for a right click on someone, and then he's like, guys, and he just gets destroyed afterwards.
To be fair, I think part of that is also Violet's fault individually, that he's trying super hard to make plays, and he's like tunneling on that damage a lot of the time, and he's not paying attention to what his teammates are doing.
Yeah, he definitely, they need to improve that and integrating him in more, and it might be a bit of a language thing as well. I don't really know what Violet's ability to speak English is like. I think another big one is making sure that you don't get punished for Sinatra holding individually. There was a load of different, I know you did a bit about this, Monty, as well, and when I was doing my review as well, I found another couple of scenarios where they like to push the enemy team away and then destroy Sinatra. So it's not like they see Sinatra on his own and they all rush Sinatra, because Shock would actually quite like that, because then they can hit them on the flank of the Titans. They push Shock out, and then once Shock are pushed far enough away, and Sinatra's like miles over there, they go and kill him. And another thing,
Sinatra puts himself in those positions though a lot of the time, and that's just it's part and parcel to like, and I'm hesitant to say that Shock should stop doing that
Oh, no, I think it's good.
It also
They just need to react.
it also wins them a lot of fights because of his position. Like his aggressive positioning is a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
It allows him to pump out unreal amounts of damage, especially if you're not paying attention to him or you don't realize that he's suddenly like on your flank on the high ground. But it is also a punishable position at the same time.
Yeah. I think the final thing that they need to work on from that Titans game as well, if they want to win stage 1, is their strategy for control, and Busan in particular. Because that seems to be where they sub in Smurf and Striker and people like that, and it's...
To be fair, one of the things I liked about seeing the latest iteration of the Shock was they put in Super on the control map, which made them play not amazingly well on control, but at least significantly better. And I think that part of it is like the synergy with Super and Sinatra is a core part of what is making the Shock good. And as Peak was referring to, one of the things that Super does by dropping onto objectives early is he forces the other team to focus him, because all of a sudden he is like threatening a point, right? He is, if you don't walk up onto that point with him, then he's going to just get a bunch of % for free, right? So he's putting pressure on that point. And because he's by himself, sure, his statistics aren't great because he's standing there absorbing damage, but it gives time a lot, like in a lot of circumstances, his aggressive positioning and even him dying allows Sinatra to get into position to hit the big grabs or to like do just tons and tons of damage to the enemy team, right? So in some ways, he's serving as a distraction to help Sinatra be aggressive in his positioning.
I feel like they also need to add depth to their patterns of plays, if that makes sense. For example, how Moth, he would usually beat at the very end of a Diva Bomb exploding just to get the max beat HP %. Then on 2CP, when they played versus Titans, Slime, he would go for these boops to boop him up, like to delay the beat and then eventually kill Moth, because Moth would disregard the position, like his positioning, to be able to exit from a bomb if it's threatening both him and the teammates. So for example, if he's on point, the teammates are like at the mini house, like the corner, and a bomb comes, he uses beat because you bounce up, Slime is ready and then boops him extra. And they never really did the same towards Titans. Like they didn't punish Slime when he would go for a beat and then boop him upwards. And at first they didn't, Vancouver didn't do that versus Shock, like in the first 2 maps. But they figured it out later on, and I feel like that's also part to why like they never kept first point on Moskaya, as an example. Oh, well, they did actually, my bad.
Yes, but it just took them a long time. And I understand your point as well. They need to... I think something that the Titans are so incredibly good at is figuring out their opponent's win conditions and fucking with them. And so they're not just thinking about their own win conditions, they're thinking about what could end up ruining them and making sure that does not happen. And so if there's like a Grav Bomb combo going on, then maybe they'll expend a lot of resources trying to demech the Diva so that they can't follow it with the bomb, or they'll put a lot of pressure on a Rhine and push him out of position, or like you're saying there, make sure that Moth can't get off good beats. And Shock don't quite have that in their gameplay yet. And I think, really, I've only seen the Titans be able to do that. NYXL play a slower style that's more about punishing mistakes. It's not really about being proactive and ruining your enemy's positioning or ruining your enemy's ultimates. So I think Titans are kind of on another level when it comes to that stuff.
Oh no, they're incredibly creative in their ult economy, right? Like it's always clear that they know exactly what you have, and they've got these tools. That's what I was talking about in my Titans analysis video when they were attacking that point on Volskaya. Like they knew what the options were for the Shock were, and so they knew that they had to use this self-destruct to create a zone to kill Sinatra, and like that was the best way to win that point. It's amazing, really.
Yeah.
So it's like in that moment, you could see that they both had excellent command over enemy ult economy, their ult economy, and the stylistic preference of San Francisco for playing that point. This was super cool.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Right, what about... I'm just going to go ahead and admit it. This is secretly the team that I'm just going to ask about every fucking week till I get some substantial answers that set my mind one way or the other. What about the Seoul Dynasty? Because the thing is, it's not just nostalgia. I do see occasional flashes that tell me something could happen with this team. Like Flair still does some pretty nice shit. Fisher's still a very good player. So why isn't it all come together?
Last game versus NYXL, I haven't seen it yet because of EO hours, but I can speak about the older games after you guys give your thoughts.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
I also only caught snippets of the Seoul NYXL game, but I know that it was incredibly one-sided.
Yeah,
the only map they won, they also failed on the offense. So
and
it doesn't look good.
Also, the NYXL threw the last fight on Numbani, which they should have won. So there was a lot going on there. I honestly don't really understand how the Seoul Dynasty can go from playing very aggressively to weirdly passively from match to match. Like it looks like they're a different team.
I think
there's like two different teams.
Yeah, I think there's actually two different teams within this team as well. And I think it's I'm gonna pin most of the blame honestly on Fleta, weirdly. I think that Fleta Zarya is really quite passive in a lot of these situations, and his bubble timings seem to be very poor. He's outputting a crap ton of damage and staying alive a lot, but he is never in the most aggressive positions possible. And that means, and his bubble timings are great. So that means that Fissure wants to play aggressive, but Fleta's kind of baiting him in order to get charge and isn't really supporting Fissure. So the way that this team would like to play is around Fissure, where you give him all of the resources, and Munchkin and Fleta both play pretty aggro as well, and you end up just playing aggressively into the enemy team. And instead what happens is most of their team kind of hangs back, but Fissure wants to get aggressive, and so he ends up just getting hung out to dry and ends up dying. And the Seoul are also very slow to be able to react to things. They're not fast with rotations, they're not fast with disengages, they're not fast at capitalizing on opportunities. They're a sluggish team. And if they are able to increase the speed at which they react to stuff and also fix Fleta's aggression and bubbles, I think they'd be a much better team. So I think some parts of it are working pretty well, but there's a lot of fundamental stuff that I think is out of whack for them.
I feel like Fissure was the charge for the first game they had in week 1. Then when they faced Dallas, I feel like it was the Seoul that loses. To me, they seem like they overthink about comps. They overthink about like the high level stuff, and they forget like the steps in between. Like you say, they are sluggish, for example, and they end up giving away, for example, old charge here and there, and etc. And how much of that could be, for example, because of how Fissure is like the main leadership, I guess, because when he was picked up, they also released this video, right, where he says he believes Seoul lost because they trusted the coaches too much. And like,
that was incredible! I was dying watching
I was like,
beast.
that is like the peak Fissure moment right there.
What
right?
an absolute mad rebel!
It's like, don't even wait 5 minutes to be in the team before you just wreck your own coaching staff. Fucking hell.
Great. I mean, none of the coaches are
What a
actually
legend.
with them anymore.
What a legend.
But
Sure.
even just the idea of it, like he's in the, like he's in the, like he's in the dugout and he's just like, they're all nodding along to what's going on, and then Fisher's like, it's all right, don't listen to him anyway. We'll just do whatever I tell you in the match.
it feels like he's either fist fighting the coaches, or it's like the coaches are working with him, but the rest of the team is like they gotta go through his filter, sort of. So like he has to approve whatever they're thinking, and that's some delay.
Okay.
I was like, Fissure just rolls into any team and he's like, I'm the captain now. You know?
It's like he walks in and you've got all your like your best strats on the whiteboard. He just comes in like, you know, the new teacher who comes in. The first thing they do is they get that like the chalk eraser and they wipe everything off the board and then they just write their name on it. He goes, Fisher, my name is Mr. Fisher. You will refer to me by that during this class. Like, forget everything you just taught, throw it all away. You know when they try to do like the emphasis, like they get the old textbook and throw it in the bin. Forget everything you learned last year. We start now. And then obviously, here's the thing, if the coaching staff needs sort of a catchy way to get through to Fleta, just tell him, the problem is, Fleta, you're playing too much of a BG, whereas we need MJ. Not he'll be like, what the fuck does that even mean? What a bad game. No, all you're doing at the moment is just staying alive. But we need you to unleash aggressive bubbles. Now that was fucking laid right there, side shoulder. Michael Jackson had a chimp called Bubbles that was known to attack and bite people. Meanwhile, the Bee Gees are famous for their hit song "Staying Alive," which is somewhat played out at this point in time.
I think you're a bit older than me.
It's all right, mate.
It's all right. Rushing noises.
It's all right. It's all right. I'll explain 2 hours ago. You know.
Yeah.
I you know what the best part about Fissure to me is like I can't necessarily say that he's wrong because of the way that the Gladiators collapsed in the playoffs without him.
Yep.
Like I'm sure he was just sitting there in the team house giggling to himself, watching them totally get wrecked by London on the last
with
day of their
Eminem without
competition.
me playing in the background on repeat.
and then he's like, "Wow, they were dumb. Look at them losing
Exactly.
without me."
Yeah.
Right? So I can't even necessarily say Fisher's take is not the best.
I don't
So
think he'll be giggling if they end up benching him for Marvel because he'll struggle to find another team as well. If he ends up being on his 4th team at some point this year or next year, I think that's a reputation that's going to follow him around, because even if there isn't that much to it, the idea that he comes in and takes control of teams, it certainly appears like that from the outside.
I feel
maybe I just think he needs to find the right fit, right? Eventually, some team's just going to be like, "Fuck it, Fisher, you're so good," because he is fucking good.
He is
We're
good,
just going to build the team around you. You're the boss now. Somebody's going to give him that opportunity.
That's
I'm
why
not sure.
actually it feels more like a Western team would be the place for him, because we can accept a bit of ego as long as you're a sick player, basically. Whereas, like, that's exactly where you'd think being in an all-Korean team, it isn't going to vibe that way.
It's also, I also think like you have to take that kind of stuff in esports with a grain of salt, because so often what ends up happening is that I would say a normal amount of aggression and competitiveness with sheltered gamers turns into a bad situation really quickly.
It
if
gets
that makes sense.
exacerbated for sure, yeah.
Yeah, whereas like in regular sports, star players are frequently giant assholes, incling being giant assholes.
Just look at
to
all the
their
wide
teammates.
receivers in the fucking NFL who are star players. They literally, there's a reason they call them diva receivers.
But you know what? They're good enough that people put
Exactly.
up with it and they
That's
learn
exactly
how to
the
deal
point.
with it.
Yeah. It's the
And I
same
I
analogy.
feel like the threshold for putting up with that is very low among other esports players, and that they need to just sort of bite the bullet and let Fissure do Fissure things as long as he keeps popping off.
The assumption here as well, though, is that somebody's limiting Fissure's ability in this game, and I'm also not sure that is the case, because Fissure's never played in like a GOAT system before, and his style of Reinhardt is pretty, I don't know, it's definitely different to how it's usually played in GOATs. So it's also possible that he does have full run of this team and just doesn't quite have the greatest understanding of how to play GOATs, and is therefore not able to reach his peak. And it might not be that anybody else is holding him back, but from the outside it certainly does look like he is trying to play one style and the rest of his team is trying to play another.
Yeah, like Fleta, for example, like you said, with the bubbles and all. I feel like Fleta is a very rational player. Like, you can tell him something with logic and he understands it and does it. But if you're the Reinhardt telling him how to play Zarya, and you like think from a Reinhardt's perspective, you don't really see all the intricacies that Zarya has, for example.
Sure.
You might miss out like how to be disciplined about bubbles, for example, like when you can use the bubbles to bait but also not bait, and and I'm not sure I think we'll see by stage 2, for example, who makes the strats. Like, if it's around Fissure still, and it looks like he's the one making the calls, so to say, because when he played in Gladiators, it was very obvious that he was the one making the dives.
Yeah.
And I definitely agree it doesn't work out in GOATs. I was thinking, like, what if he's trying to be a star player too much? Because, Reinhardt gets the VIP status, and then he forgets about needing others to empower him, not only outside of the game, like that's probably fixed, but you have this, like, a slime booping people, do you have like a cruise, like cruise massa, etc. Do you have maybe they rely on Zen, for example, trying to frag out, who knows? Like, to compensate for weak points in their team play.
Yeah, they definitely do seem like they have weak team play. I don't think that I would really say that I've got a problem with anybody's individual performances. Like, I think Jaehong, I thought that Jaehong might just be totally washed up this season, actually. I thought it might be like 2019's Miro, where he just goes, you know, everybody else overtakes him on the flex support position, but he's played surprisingly well. He still looks like a pretty competent Ana. His Zen looks on point. He actually hasn't beefed too many of the ultimates, and he's not been caught out of position that much. So I've been pretty impressed with him. Jexa as well has actually been fairly decent. Some weird stuff, actually. I thought perhaps he would be, you know, one of the elite Lucios and looked like it early on, but I think he's dropped off a little bit. But still looks fairly decent. Michelle's got a lot of talent and is incredibly flexible, is possibly one of the best players in this meta on this team. And then Fisher's very talented, and both of their... I mean, Munchkin isn't the greatest, but he's doing okay, and Flood is there, but the team play between them all is really poor, and I don't know what the solution to that is. They might just, again, be one of those teams that tries to ride it out and rally behind whatever the future metas are.
No, I would say like it definitely looks like they try to be creative with strats, just like putting out Orisa where it shouldn't be working, like they did versus Dallas, because like Dallas played a lot of Orisa, so like you can surely assume that they know how to beat Orisa with double sniper on King's Row.
So we have Clutch versus 100 Thieves. Both teams are actually doing so badly compared to what they thought their roster would be. They're both 3-7. I think Clutch and 100 Thieves were both upper half of spenders. They're definitely spending a lot on their roster, and these are not kind of the results that they wanted. So it is very worrying to see. One thing that 100 Thieves is doing that a lot of teams are starting to do versus Clutch is ban out some of the flex picks. Yasuo, Zayth, and then Clutch actually ended up banning out their own flex pick in Cassio. Clutch is a team that loves playing with flex picks and that loves getting the best of people by using flex picks in drafts. So yeah, I mean, banning out core flex picks, and you can still see them taking a flex pick in Silas. Why flex pick is so important. Let me pause for a second and I'll try to explain why flex pick is so important. So the most powerful pick position is pick 10. This pick right here. Because you get to counter pick anyone. This pick allows you to counter pick anyone in the game, and it's the last pick that gets done, 10th pick. So it's the most powerful pick. And by having flex picks, you can somehow deflect that, especially if you can get 2 flex picks. If you can get 2 flex picks, then you counter red side a lot. 2 flex picks can make it hard to draft from red side, and that's what usually blue side, one of the blue side patterns that's really good, taking 2 flex picks and allowing red side to not able to fully really counter pick you. So, and Clutch is a team that, as I said, that makes good use of flex picks, so you can see them taking it early. And yeah, both Piglet, Huni, Demonte, all really great on a lot of these champions. Let's see what goes. Silas first pick, 100 Thieves, and they do lock in Israel. I remember that from the draft, and it's also something Bang has been historically good on, and something I do think they should be playing more of, and something I do think is really good for them. Someday, great on split push, so Israel can go into a 1-3-1 comp, and also because they're having communication issues, I actually think Israel is one of the best champions when you're having communication issues, because you can do a lot of things by yourself. Clutch Gaming replying with Kai'Sa, so the thing that's special about Kai'Sa for Piglet is, at least, I think this is his first Kai'Sa game. It's Piglet's first Kai'Sa game of the split. Also, I was pretty surprised to see 100 Thieves take Braum over Alistar. I think most people would agree Alistar is the best support in the meta, so this Kai'Sa Alistar is a really powerful bot lane that they were able to take. 100 Thieves taking Rise, most likely Silas is going to be mid. maybe, and they could also potentially put Rise top versus Sylas if Sylas goes top. Rise is one of those champions that do really well versus Sylas and that people like picking. So now they're starting to ban out jungle. They want to kind of remove the playmaker from Lira's hand, it looks like, banning out Lee. Clutch banning Irelia, it's kind of weird. I'm not sure why they'd be afraid of the Irelia and why they're banning Irelia. Maybe they think of Irelia really highly. And Sejuani banned. Sejuani, I wouldn't say it's like a favorite of Lyra, but definitely a strong pick in the meta. And they're banning it out. And they ended up banning Rek'Sai. It just looks like both teams kind of pushing each other on jungle picks. Not much to really say about them. I don't think it really signals anything one way or the other. Okay, Jarvan. Jarvan, one of the more commonly picked jungles and top lanes in NALCS right now. It gives you great engage, it gives you a tank, like it does a lot of things that you need your jungler to do and your top laner to do. So Karma, this was actually something that Clutch prepared a lot this week, which is, and something I thought really important that Clutch really needed to get done. I think they were a team that had huge problems in terms of actually being actually how would I say it? I thought they were a team that had huge problems actually determining what their identity is and who they are as a team. I think one of their identities right now is flex picks. I think another one of their identity right now is budget G2. And those aren't also just very strong identities to have. You need to have an identity beyond being a budget G2, being a team that can utilize flex picks really well. There needs to be a more so of an identity. And I think the big identity crisis came from having both Huni and Piglet on the team, usually players that like being played towards, that like having a lot of the resources. So by Huni playing Karma, the comp becomes very, very based around Piglet and around Kai'Sa. The Karma and Alistar are very supportive champions that work with Kai'Sa and that are trying to enable Kai'Sa much as possible. And at least like Clutch having identity with their draft and identity with what they want to do going forward. And they told me they practice a lot with this kind of comp last week. So that's something that's really good to hear. And it gives them forward direction. And as for the entirety in draft itself, we can talk about it. So Clutch is a team fight team. They want a team fight. They can split push with Sylas and Karma, or Sylas and Nocturne, but generally the strongest thing they can do is team fight. And it's going to come off of Kai'Sa and Karma and Alistar. They have really great engage, and Nocturne and Alistar and Sylas can steal Jarvan ult, so they have a lot of tools that they want to team fight with. And for 100 Thieves, they're actually a split push comp. Double teleports and Rise and Ribbon, and also Israel running teleport, and Israel can be in mid lane defending mid really well, so they're most likely going to be a 1-3-1 comp. Also, one thing that's really weird about current NALCS right now is people are really bad at split push and people are really bad at taking turrets. But there's one champion that's really great at taking turrets and great at split pushing for NA. It's not Jafe, it's actually Rise. Because Rise scales incredibly well. And when later on, Rise is in a side lane versus majority of the solo lane champions, Rise actually beats Rise beats up pretty much anyone. So you saw this a lot last weekend, where you would have Rise in a side lane, and the Rise would just beat up whoever's in the side lane and start taking turret. So it's hilarious to say, but Rise is the most premier split pusher in NALCS right now. I think if you want to play the split push, Rise is better than Yorick a lot of times in NALCS. So yeah, 100 Thieves has one of the best split pushing champions. Yeah, I know I already did this one. I'm doing it again because I did it with Daniel and I want to do it just myself for you too. Rise is considered the best split pusher in NA right now. It's just so funny because he has AP, so he can do a lot of damage on turret, and he's also very simple and easy to play. And when someone's is in a side lane, you can just beat them up and take turret on them. We saw it so much in an ALCS. Alright, let's speed up the... Let's go to double speed. Why don't they build Nashor on him if they're going to split? I mean, if that's all they're gonna do, I do think they should just do it. So what's going on right now is they have a problem with the pause. Or they have a problem with swapping. So Jarvan and Ribbon actually didn't get to swap. So yeah, they had a problem with it. And now they're telling everyone to leave the game. So I'll actually tell you guys exactly what happened. So watch Afro move screen here. Watch Afro move screen here. So he left the game there. And everyone's starting to leave the game and they're waiting for the game to remake. But here's the problem. Because they're on tournament client, right? On tournament client, when you leave the game, unless you unpause the game still exists. So they had 35 seconds to swap. They had no problems. They fucked up. Now they pressed swap, and the champions weren't swapping. It wasn't a player fault. It was like the client error. So here's a problem about swapping in tournament client, or here's a problem about remaking in tournament client. If you leave a game up in tournament client, and you don't unpause and leave the game will not break. The game will stay up forever. So you have to unpause the game before you leave, or the game just stays up forever. And for some reason, Riot employees didn't know that, or the refs didn't know that. So they're not unpausing the game, and the game is just staying up. So everyone's just waiting, like, dude, what is it? Like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And eventually, one of the players went into the game, unpaused, and then left. So the game actually exited. So Riot actually had no idea, but luckily one of the players was able to unpause and it worked. So they're just all sitting there trying to figure out the problem when one of the players know like what can be fixed. Yeah, it was Afro. Afro went in and fixed the problem for everyone. Oh my god. Holy shit. So it stayed paused for such a long time. Shameless plug. So now we can play. Yeah, I will say this was probably the worst game of the split so far. Worst in quality and the level of play. Worst in terms of just so bad, just so bad. So I talked to Dom about this game. Or not Dom about this game. I talked to Dom about this weekend. I was like, hey Dom, I want you to come for Listen Loco. Would love to have you. Have you watched all of the NALCS games? And he's like, unfortunately, yes. And this game, this weekend was just so tragic. And I think the TSM Cloud9 game really saved the weekend, and it was a great game. Okay, so we can actually, let's talk about this laden bait after it's talking a little bit about this weekend. But this weekend, it has some god-awful games, and especially on Saturday. But TSM Cloud9 game really saved this weekend. CLG also. Alright, so we can talk about what this is. They place a ward here and they're late invading. Why they're late invading is because they have Braum, and Braum's one of the best level 1 champions. When you have Braum on the team, it's like having 2 spells at level 1 because of his Q, it slows, and his passive is incredibly OP. So a lot of Braum teams will level 1 invade. So that's why they're doing the level 1 invade, placing this ward, walking in late. And what they want to do is take the red buff for Jarvan. So how Clutch should reply is if they can push out mid, they can collapse first, and they can try to get a 4v3 going, or they just stalemate it and they do nothing. And they wait for them to start red buff and then start collapsing, or go to a different buff if they feel like they can't win. So let's see what they do. So it seems like they feel like they can't win, so they're just gonna give up the buff. 100 Thieves off to a good start. Jarvan taking red away from Nocturne, really good. This is making good use of Braum and the early level 1 vulnerability. Optic TL I don't think is the worst game because it at least has clean parts. So Onda kind of has to back up here because he doesn't have his smite up, and also Huni got priority on top side and he's walking down and helping Lyra with this. Early game for why Nocturne's such a premier jungler is Nocturne actually farms incredibly quick. His camp clear is incredibly quick, and his early skirmishing is not that bad at all. Nice try for engage from Vulcan on the forced flash out. So Nocturne is actually pretty decent at skirmishes early. Like when you meet a Nocturne in the jungle, like Nocturne can actually beat the fuck up out of you. And a lot of that comes from Lethal Tempo. Lethal Tempo makes Nocturne incredibly strong early. He hits Q on you, and then he starts fearing you, and it's a very, very strong way for Nocturne to start the fight and really begin to pressure someone. So where a lot of the problems come is he's actually a terrible ganker before 6. So what Nocturne wants his team to do is he wants his team to have priority, and he wants to fight for Scuttle, and he wants to take early skirmishes. He just never ever wants to gank early and make sure he's hitting level 6 as fast as possible. I actually think that's one of the false conception around Nocturne that a lot of people have, that Nocturne is weak early. Nocturne is actually pretty strong early. His early skirmish is no joke. So I talked about this a lot with Daniel when we were doing the VAD review, but so thing about playing a melee matchup into a range matchup, right? What's supposed to happen is you're supposed to be down on CS. They're able to get the first blood there. Vulcan, great, cancel on the EQ, but we'll talk about a little bit what happened top side. So when you're playing a melee matchup versus a range matchup, the concept that you have to understand is every creep is worth a certain amount of HP. So Somedae's already very low here, and he's gonna get doped. Like, this dive is unpreventable when his jungler's on bot side and he's that low. But one thing that you have to understand is every creep is worth a certain amount of HP. So if you go for a certain creep, right, you have to tell yourself, hey, this creep's worth 50 HP. Hey, this creep is worth 100 HP. This creep is worth 150 HP, 200 HP. Hey, this creep is worth 0 HP. What I mean by that is certain creeps, and depending on the enemy laner's cooldown, enemy laner's position to the lane, they can damage you a lot if you go for certain creeps. And if it's a really, really important concept for you to understand, because if you go for every creep, then eventually you're going to be too chunked out and you can't go for any creeps, and your subs, you can get dove, you can get killed at turret, like you can get solo killed. There's just a lot of things that can happen to you when you're too low of an HP. So it's very, very important for the top laner, or for any laner playing a melee matchup or a losing matchup, to kind of understand which creeps that you can go for without losing that much HP and not be greedy. I see it so much from LCS players where they try to stay even on CS and they let go of their HP and they get chunked out in order to take the creeps itself, and it's a really, really bad habit, and it's one of the reasons why Someday got doped this game, because he was trying way too hard to get every single CS earlier on in the game and not respecting the kind of damage that Karma has and the kind of harass that Karma has, and being like, I'm gonna have to give up some CS this game, and that's just part of it. So here I replayed this gank a lot with Daniel, so I know how it works. I can talk to you guys about it. So he saw Onda here, so it's really important Someday turns around. He needs to start turning around, and Onda needs to start going on Huni right away. Because Huni doesn't have flash from the initial gank. He's actually a really free kill. And I think if they turned around immediately and gone for the gank here, it would have been completely fine.